Sure, WWE wrestlers aren't actual fighters, but they are some of the strongest human beings on Earth. Don't believe me? Wait until you see this. Braun Strowman is a human bulldozer. The monster among men has demonstrated a ton of amazing feats of strength. However, there were usually some behind-the-scenes tricks that made the impossible possible. Despite that, there were no tricks with this amazing feat of strength. On Raw in 2018, Braun Strowman and Finn Balor were backstage talking to Stephanie McMahon. Their conversation would lead to a match between Braun and Finn later that night. To show everyone he meant business, Strowman picked up an apple and crushed it with just one hand.
I like competition.
Before they would debut on the main roster as The Shield, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns fought each other in a triple threat match in FCW. It was pretty cool to see, and one moment in particular stood out. While Dean and Seth were going at it, Roman swooped in, lifted both men on his shoulders, and gave them a massive Samoan drop. Reigns was literally carrying the Shield on his back at one point. Johnny Stamboli is a WWE wrestler you might not be familiar with, but you certainly will remember him after you see this. On an episode of SmackDown in 2003, Stamboli was in a match against the 350-pound Rikishi. While Rikishi started the match hot, Johnny turned things around quickly when he lifted the super heavyweight over his head and then slammed him onto the mat. This is almost an inhuman level of strength. Before he defended the World Heavyweight Championship against Rey Mysterio and Batista, the Great Khali appeared backstage to show how powerful he was. Khali grabbed a cantaloupe and squeezed it flat with his bare hands. That was nothing though. Right after that, the Indian giant took a watermelon and used his raw strength to bust the fruit wide open. Just to explain how hard that is, it takes about 364 pounds of force to crush a watermelon. Shortly before the 2021 Royal Rumble, Bayley challenged Bianca Belair to an obstacle course. Bayley completed the challenge first, giving Belair the time to beat. When it was Bianca's turn, she found that the course was a bit more difficult than what her opponent had to go through. This included having to lift the 330-pound Otis on her shoulders. For the EST of WWE, it was no problem, and Belair carried Otis like he was nothing. Bianca Belair really is the strongest woman in WWE. On the flip side, Mark Henry is called the world's strongest man, and he has definitely earned that title. Throughout his WWE career, Henry demonstrated how strong he really was. However, one of the best demonstrations of Mark Henry's godlike strength happened on the January 6, 2006 episode of SmackDown. The main event was a steel cage tag team match featuring Rey Mysterio and Batista taking on Eminem. Partway through the match, Mark Henry came storming out. The plan was for Mark Henry to break the lock on the cage door and get involved, which is what happened. However, WWE's production team was supposed to gimmick the lock to make it easy to break. Someone messed up and put a real lock around the door instead. Mark Henry was so strong though that he was able to break a real steel chain and get the job done. Cesaro's nickname in WWE was the Swiss Superman, and that was no exaggeration. Cesaro has demonstrated his unhuman-like strength multiple times, but the most impressive moment was during a 2 out of 3 falls match with Sami Zayn. The finish of the match involved Zayn going for a tornado DDT, but Cesaro countered and then lifted Sami above his head, only to throw him into the air for an uppercut. That's 212 pounds that Cesaro held up, and he did it after wrestling for over 10 minutes. Amazing. In 1998, Goldberg was unstoppable. The master of the jackhammer had never been defeated, which earned him the World Heavyweight Championship. However, Goldberg's undefeated streak was going to be tested when he faced The Big Show. The Giant was a powerful foe, but even he couldn't stop Goldberg. While all this was scripted, the one thing that wasn't was Big Show's size. Despite the 7-foot-tall monster's weight, Goldberg was able to lift him into the air and send him crashing back down for the jackhammer. While that was impressive, it's worth noting that Goldberg wasn't the first person to manhandle Big Show like that. Over a year earlier, Big Show was in a match against Mr. Perfect. Despite the incredible size difference, Mr. Perfect was somehow able to execute the perfect plex on the Giant. I guess that's why they call him, well, you know. Speaking of Big Show, did you know that there have been several WWE wrestlers who are taller than him? To see who they are and how tall they actually were, watch this video.